Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Tuesday. It is March 9th. This will be our chart lesson for the day, and it's all uphill pretty much today through 2 o'clock. It went a little flat late this afternoon, but you can clearly see the larger two-tiered channel. But what we did was we had a spiking channel within that, which is the yellow channel, and then that kind of flattened out into the green channel. But really, this afternoon, you were probably better off really from about just before lunchtime to 2 o'clock. You can see how things slowed down tremendously, and it's pretty much sideways from there. You could almost argue that there's a close outside right here, but it's not very convincing. So I really believe this was the final close. This was the close outside, and then you had two legs up. We didn't quite get two measured legs, and then we just kind of started working sideways before it finally reversed and turned out. It takes a while sometimes for a trend this like this to kind of run its course. So it's not unusual to kind of to see these alternative channels in here. And really, there's a spike in channel short term that turned into a little longer term, and you can see the break and new high there. And then we corrected for a while, but once we got back to this trend line, we continued on up until we got the break here, a couple of legs, and then really we were going sideways from there. So that's how I saw it today. Let's back out. We'll go through the trades and kind of take it from there. Or let's back in, zoom in. And you can see we were trending up in this blue channel here, but we were also kind of working sideways here. And you really might have played this down here like so. I ended up moving it up when we bounced right here to right there. But I believe you could play it. It's probably, this looks more real, closer to the, because we came back down again here, and you could see prices bouncing off up. We had a little failed breakout, but we went right back in, and then boom, we took off here. So 7 o'clock came just as we're bottoming out here. We had a little overshoot on the failed break lower, and then we just kind of went sideways. But notice what we did here. We tested this low. We came back, we tested it once, and then we tested it a second time, and that's also a first entry, second entry long. So I like going long there. It's a little bit aggressive. You'd really like to see prices come back to the trend line, but there's clearly support there, and it's holding, and a market that can't go lower is going to go higher. There's a higher low here, and this one you could argue really either way to be. It's close to being blue. I mean, it's clear this is a trend line working up, and this is a much higher low after we've just came off this support area here, and it's a pullback to test that breakout, and it breaks lower and turns and goes out the other side. I like going long there. I marked it green, but it's really borderline. You could argue for it to be blue. But if you're patient, just in a few minutes, you get a first entry, and then you get a second entry long right here. Just this actually breaks lower and then goes up. I believe it broke lower first. Either way, you could wait till this one closes and go long above it. And you can see prices take off there. That's the first break outside of this tight channel working up through here. But it's also a second entry and a higher low. You really looks like two legs up, and you had more than one failure, so it's technically not a failed second entry short. That actually occurred right here, and that wasn't a very good failure setup. But when you got the second entry, just take that trade. That turns out to be a nice trade. And of course, we go back to the highs where we've already turned down, and we get a first. We test it once, we test it twice, and we had we had the close outside a new high here and an overshoot, and then a double top, and this is also a second entry short. Notice this low right here, first entry, second entry. Nice bearish bar. I like that one. And you would expect prices would be coming back to here to the trend line at some point, or at least back down to the lows of the range. And we bounce a little early here at the midline, but you can't enter there. I don't see anything through here I like. You're just kind of weak sideways to downwards. And you make your low, and then you make a double bottom and higher low, and that pretty much confirms that trend line. Let me just back out here just a hair. And you can see that trend line working up through there. That pretty much confirms it. Actually, this touch here does, and this is just a double confirmation of it. If this was right against, I'm a little hesitant on this one because of the trend line working down here, but it looks like you can see that when we come up short right here, that's telling you something. We can't get back down there, and you can see that trend line holding, so it looks like that's going to be your dominant pattern. And this is close to being green, but I like it because of the main trend line. And what you'd want to do here is just make sure you got enough room to get out before you kind of get back to this midline and maybe even this. So you might let it break higher and drop a limit order a tick or two back just to get a little better entry before it takes off. If you want to be aggressive, just go long one tick above it. There may be room in there anyway. I'm not sure. I didn't look at it that closely, but I like the entry. And we run up and we just start working sideways here. We actually break out of the yellow sideways range. There's a second entry long right here. I wouldn't actually call that a second entry, but technically this is a double top. It's really a triple top. So this was you could look at it as first entry, second entry, or you could just look at that as a new high and first entry, and then we come back and go higher here, second entry. I don't like going long into that resistance across there. There's a little range here. Let me just put it on here. And you can see that. And I just don't like going long right there. But draw that trend line. This looks like a spiking channel. And notice this is starting to look like a little one of those trends where you get lots of little small bars in the corrections. I marked this one green simply because it's off that key entry point. It's also off the EMA. Really nice bullish bar, but it's only a first entry. So, but the thing is, there's a key entry point there, and we're still above the midline of the bigger channel. You can see that dotted midline working up there, and it's a pullback to test that is what it is. But it also, you got the midline, the channel here, this bluer channel, and then you got the EMA as well. So you got three forms of support there it's testing, and all of them holding. So I like going long there. Again, it's a little aggressive, but that's the reason I like it. There's a little hidden second entry here, but signal bar is no good. And then finally we get a break, and we're working back to the yellow trend line again. And notice we made that low, and then we come back. Again, this is very similar. Where was the other one that I showed you like that? I think it's right here. Yes, it's very similar to that right there. It's almost like a repeat pattern. It's the same type entry. So again, I marked this one green because you don't have as much room, and it's definitely a little more congestive looking to me, because this is an inside bar, and this is just another inside bar to this one. So, but it looks very similar to this, and generally repeat patterns tend to play out the same way. So you may take that trade. I marked it green. If you took it, it's a little aggressive, but there's reasons to like it. The biggest problem is this channel is still in play. But it's obvious maybe the yellow one's the dominant pattern. And it turns out that's the case, and it just goes higher. We come back again here, but we don't quite get back to the trend line. And it's just a first entry. But finally you get a first entry short, and then a second entry short, and a higher low. This signal bar is not any good, so even though that's a second entry, you couldn't enter on the second entry. Notice the new high, and you pull back and you get a break higher, so that's your first entry. Then you start working lower. When it breaks higher above this bar, it's a second entry long. Now that's not a good enough setup to take just on a second entry. But if you look off the lows, you got a new swing low there. It's lower than that swing low. It's even lower than these two. but you get a first entry short, then it corrects, and you get a second entry short. So that's a failed second entry short and a second entry long, and it's off the key entry point. For that reason, I like that trade. And we just continue to work up kind of weekly there until we finally get a close outside. And notice how we bounce off this trend line. And I looked at this as a double top, so you get one leg correction, second leg. So that's a second entry long. This is basically a double top, so it's a new high, count 0. So first entry, then you pull back, and then a second entry long when it breaks higher right here. It takes it a minute to take off, but I think you would have scalped out of this pretty quickly though. It comes back again, and really you could look at this as a failed second entry short. I didn't mark it. Notice this is a new swing low. It's lower than that one. So first entry, it actually makes a new low is really, but it's still, we try to go lower 3 times and it's right off the key entry point. The problem is this is your signal bar and it's just too bearish. So, and it's a lot of sideways action there too, but it is right off that key entry point. It's a shame we don't get a setup there. And then this is where we run up to a new high, and then we just start working sideways. And I don't see any longs I like, and you got to be careful going short because the blue channel's still in play. And at first we're really working this tighter channel, but it drops lower, so it's obvious that's a midline, and then your equal distances here, and you can see that. And notice we make that low. We test it once. We test it twice. Actually, you made your low here, and this didn't quite test it, but I counted that as a test. So this is your double test right here, and this is actually your signal bar. So it's a failed second entry short either way, but it almost looks like a double test. But the reason I like this one is just it's a failure. Notice we made that low. You try to go short once, try to go short twice, and it fails. Just if it breaks higher here, we're probably going at least to test the highs. And this is almost a neutral bar. It closes in its upper half, not quite its upper third. So it's not a very good signal bar as far as a second entry type trade, but with that failure, it doesn't matter. We don't care about the signal bar on the failures. Actually, sometimes the more bearish, if you're trying to go long, the better, because it fools a lot of people. But it's right here at the support of the range, the support of the trend line. You don't really have the EMA working in your favor. It's just flat there, and we're swinging back and forth, so you just kind of eliminate that at this point. But I like going long there. There's a higher low here, but the signal bar is not good enough. And then really you could look at this as another failed second entry short here. So if it breaks higher, we're probably going higher. And you actually get another little trap there. We actually break higher, pull back. It's like a little breakout pullback. I'm not crazy about that entry, but it's another one that you could probably argue to be green. And we run all the way back up to the top. There's actually a little trend channel working up here. And we get a close or two outside, and then we make a lower high here. Since this has been a strong uptrend, I just don't think you want to go short in here yet. There is a double top here and a very bearish bar a little ways away from the EMA. If you wanted to be super aggressive, you might take that, but because we do have this is where we get the close outside of the blue channel, but it's not very convincing. And so, plus you've still got the green channel, which is obviously in play now. And so I just don't think you want to go short there. And you can't go long here. I don't know why this moved. Must have moved it out of the way. You get an overshoot, but I still don't think you want to go long there. It's too close to this trend line, and there's a good chance we pull back to it. We run up, and then we just kind of start chopping around here. this is where I looked at it as a convincing close outside the blue channel. And then I was looking for 2 legs up, and we didn't quite get it here. You can see we kind of run out of steam, and we're just kind of chopping around in this range here. But you get a lower high here. Notice you made the high, and you couldn't even get back up to the highs there. But you've had this resistance, and it's kind of like a failed breakout, and you get a lower high. It actually breaks higher and turns down. I like going short there. And it drops on down. You get a close outside of the green channel here now, but you just don't get a chance to go long with it. But when it comes back up here and this resistance holds again, notice that new low. You get a first entry, continue higher. When it breaks below that bearish bar right there, that's a second entry short. And being that far away from the EMA and the first break of this, there's a good chance we're coming back down again to test the. To test this trend line and to try to make a new low. So you got to, if you got plenty of room back to that EMA, especially being off that resistance line where prices have been turning down quite often, that's a good place to enter back just to try to get a scalp back to the EMA and maybe catch a move lower. But you get a nice little move here, and there probably would be a runner on that one, but this is where I would exit when we got close to that support again. I probably would have exited right in here. And that took us into 2 o'clock. So for the most part, it was all uphill. So you're not really, early on, this was a range, so you could no problem shorting right in there. And you really didn't have the trend channel, the blue, this bigger trend channel. Let me just make that blue just so it's clear. The blue trend channel was really not confirmed yet. So it was okay to take a short here, but past that point, until you had a break of this blue channel and a couple of legs up, and it was clear that there was strong resistance and sideways, I didn't mark any shorts. And you're better off to stay with the bias in the trend, and this would be a couple of points late in the day where you might take a short. Other than that, it's all uphill, and this early one, it's early short. So anyway, that's what I saw today. Not as many trades today, and the volatility really, after lunch, there's just not much happening there. You can see from 12 o'clock to 2, there's only that many bars, where prior to that, look at all those bars going in to noontime. So we may start slowing down again. We're still continue to run between 38 and 3,900. That seems to be the MO lately, is just we're just stuck between this. If you back out, you can kind of see it. We're still climbing higher here the last few days, but we're running around between this 3,800 and 3,900 overall. But really the last 2 days we've slowly climbed higher, as you can see there. But I'm going to wrap this up. I'm a little late. It's almost 7 o'clock. I apologize. I'm a little late with this today. So, but I had to step out of the office for a little bit today. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up and get this uploaded for you so it's not too late. Hope you had a good trading day. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. One thing real quick before I forget. Thursday is rollover day. People always ask me about this, so I want to mention it. We don't roll over on rollover day. The volume usually doesn't roll over till Friday or the following Monday. Most of the time, we'll roll over on Fridays, the day after the Thursday rollover date. Occasionally, on rare occasions, it's Monday before I roll over. So just open both charts, and on Friday, look at them. If most of the volume's in Friday, then go ahead and roll over. If it's still real equal or there's still more in the old contract, stay with the current one and wait till Monday to roll. But that's how I do it anyway. So I thought I would mention that. But I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next